I'm Brad Clifford, also known as Officer Clifford, with the Marana Police Department. I have been with the Marana Police Department for creeping up on 13 years. The last 9 years of that I've spent on a motorcycle. Now in Marana we're a little bit unique. I don't always do traffic. I am not just a traffic officer. I actually do take calls when calls are needed. If I am there, I respond fast, and one of the things the motorcycles can do that most cars can't is get there quicker, because I can get in and around traffic and respond faster. So many times our motor officers are sometimes the first ones on scene. So throughout that, I have also done patrol time. Prior to that, the few years that I was on midnights, I did a little day shift stuff. But I've done a little bit of everything. I'm currently one of the felony DUI issuing detectives. So all of our felony DUIs go through me. A lot of satisfaction in that because of what we see out there. And what we see out there is what we're here to talk about today is active shooter. I'll back up a little bit because I do have 22 years in the Air Force, 14 of it active duty and the rest of it Air National Guard, all as security police. So I have a little bit of a tactical mindset, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about today. We're going to talk about what active shooters are, who they are, what to look out for, some things to prepare ourselves for, and some of the things we don't think about because this is so much in the news media. There were two reported today. I don't know much about them, but one was up like Wisconsin area and the other was on the East Coast. And what we need to think about, and even though this has been around for the term active shooter is, I don't want to say somewhat new, but people doing gun violence in businesses and stuff isn't anything all that new. But what we don't think about is how to prepare ourselves for it. We prepare ourselves for tornadoes. Those of us from back Midwest, not much out here. But, we prepare ourselves, well, some of us go back far enough. Actually, what I thought about was we were preparing ourselves for nuclear war back in the 50s, 60s, weren't we? And we were doing disaster preparedness drills for many different reasons. And so we kind of need to think about this in a preparedness way, not a fear way, because there's evil out there, and this is certainly evil. There's no doubt about that. This is pure evil, I would have to say. But hopefully I'll give you some things to talk about. This information, I didn't create it. Actually, the government website, which you'll see later, ready.gov, has pretty much everything I'm going to talk about on it. So this isn't anything we created. Actually, the government has done some studies. And also I have to thank the Pima County Sheriff's Department, because the videos you're going to see and a lot of the pictures, the Sheriff's Department put this, really the PowerPoint together. I just added the Marana touch. I didn't want to have the little star badge on the bottom, even though when I started Marana there was a star badge. So we'll get right to this. So some of the things we're going to talk about, and even though we're going to define that active shooter, we're going to talk about the run, hide, fight model. We're going to examine and evaluate previous active shooter incidents. We're going to talk about quite a few of those. We're going to understand the law enforcement response to active shooter situations and identify ways to prevent casualties. I don't think any of us, when you read these slides here, you're not going to see anything that you're probably going to go, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. But an active shooter is a gunman actively killing or attempting to kill people. In most cases, there are no pattern or method to their selection of victims. Events are unpredictable and quickly evolving. Events are often over within minutes before law enforcement arrives on scene. Individuals must be mentally prepared to deal with an active shooter situation. The active shooter. These are rarely sudden and impulsive attacks. We've seen it out there. We've probably read. We'll talk about the one that was here in Tucson that's close to our hearts. These people plan these attacks. This isn't something that all of a sudden they woke up this morning and decided to do it. The suspect will continue until stopped. Again, we've seen this in the news. We've seen how these people, when they go into these schools, businesses, places, they're out to just do mass chaos. And they often don't have a plan or an intent to escape. Majorities are perpetrated by Caucasian males 20 to 30 years. Now, when this first came out, that was true, but the identity of shooters it's quickly changing, quickly evolving. No typical profile for social behavior. The government, the FBI, has looked at these situations deeply and That's where a lot of this information comes from. There isn't, as you see down there, active shooter suspects cannot be put in a box. There is no one, that person's going to be an active shooter. And as you see, no connection between criminal or delinquency. But suspicious behavior should always be reported. Most of these people that we've seen out here doing active shooter events have had red flags. There have been warnings. And hopefully I'll give you some of the things to look out for here shortly. And as I said, now as I was talking about things that are going to stretch your, now you might sit here and go, okay, that might be a coworker or something like that, but these are some of the things that when they've identified, when they studied the active shooters, these are the things that, like the FBI crime study has come up with. An increased alcohol or drug use, unexplained increase in absenteeism, vague physical complaints, noticeable decrease in attention to appearance or hygiene, depression, withdrawal, resistance and overreaction to changes in policy and procedures, repeated violations of company policies. I was thinking about the resistance or overreaction to changes in policy. Most of us don't like change. But increased severe mood swings, noticeably unstable emotional response, explosive outburst of anger, rage without provocation, suicidal comments about putting things together, behavior which is suspect or paranoia, everybody's against me, increasing talks or problems at home, escalation of domestic violence in the work, problems in the workplace, talk of severe financial problems, talk of previous incidents of violence, empathy, increased unsolicited comments about firearms. Most of these people, other people knew and have been around them. And when we talk about things, when we talk about behavior changes in our friends, family, coworkers, or somebody that you see on a rare occasion, even though, again, this isn't, again, we can't put everybody in a box, but these are things to be aware of, watch out for, look out for. The majority of the documented incidents demonstrate the following. The suspects have a death plan. Pardon? What does that mean? They plan to die. When they put this to action together, when they're going to go in and go all out, and they plan to die. So I won't call it necessarily a suicidal thought, and there might be, one of them might actually have been, but again, that goes back to that no escape plan. They know they're probably going to die, and they really don't care. The intent is to cause mass chaos, casualties, and chaos. So when they go in there, they're shooting the place. I mean, we look at Columbine, look at what those guys brought to school. That school, I won't say to school. No, they brought it to that school. They brought improvised explosive devices. They brought in the form of pipe bombs, different styles of weapons. They thought this out. They don't just make that stuff overnight. They had a plan. There rarely is a plan to take hostages. Again, back to that mass chaos, casualties. They want to inflict as much chaos and casualties as they possibly can. It's like that, they have no logic or reason for the act. Most of us want to know why. I mean, one of the incidents that have been recent was that Las Vegas shooter. They don't know why. They don't know why he did what he did. But he brought, that room was filled full of firearms. And nobody knows why. And certainly from a law enforcement perspective, some of us out there, we want to know why. Because we'd like to figure out how did we get there? The event is highly romanticized. Many of these shooters have put stuff out on social media. They tweeted it out, they put it in their Facebook, especially just before they start their event. So when they're getting ready to do it, again, social media, and we get instantaneous stuff. Facebook Live, they can WhatsApp, they can, all this they put it out. And the trick is to catch it before it happens. So again, that disturbing behavior, when you see stuff, let's say you're looking on Facebook and all of a sudden something in your news feed comes by as strange. If it looks weird and you're not sure, call 911. Sometimes when we sit there and look at things and we're like, well, maybe I should call the police. If you're asking yourself if you should call the police, I highly recommend doing it. I would rather come to your house, show up, and say, hey, I saw this on Facebook. And then we track it down and we do our little search and investigation, figure out and make contact with that person and find out it's nothing. That's what I hope for. Because if it is something, then we've got to look further. But anyhow, hopefully maybe that we're stopping somebody from doing something. I go back to what do active shooters look like? Well, up in the right corner is, don't recognize it, obviously, that's Jared Loeffner, Tucson shooter, Gabriel Gifford. But on a daily basis, obviously, you're seeing something here. This individual, I think that was his rant on social media before he went to Virginia Tech. But most of those are average, ordinary people. We've never been able to pick them out in the crowd. Now I have to go back. Obviously, that's Jared Loeffner's booking photo. He didn't look like that before. We'll talk about that here. Oh. When we talk about locations of incident, I don't know if you all can see this, but this is commerce, businesses. 43% have occurred there. From 2000 to 2016, that's where the most of the shootings have occurred. Then you'll see education, open spaces, government, residence, healthcare facilities, houses of worship. We're in the 3.6 category. There have been 8, 2000, 2006. Just to give you an idea of where they're happening and where they're coming from, because we tend to get focused on things, but most of us work, right? Most of us go into businesses, and that's where the majority of this is. This is going to get, this course or these ideas, these methods are designed to help you think about this. And obviously my next slide is think. The ability to process these events will greatly enhance your chances of survival. Situational awareness is safety. When I walk into a business, church, restaurant, I'm a little different because of my job, because of the people I encounter out there, the people I get to meet. Some of them aren't very nice. But when I'm looking at, when I walk in, I'm looking at it from a tactical advantage. I'm looking at it in my situational awareness. I'm looking at people. I'm watching people. I don't expect all of you to leave here and go, okay, but there are certain things I'm going to identify. Over the 13 years plus that I've done this, I can identify prison tattoos. So, and unfortunately, I'm watching everything and everybody. When I choose seats, where I sit is actually somewhat of a tactical advantage for me. In most cases, I'm probably armed because I'm a police officer and I do carry off duty. But what I'm looking at, and I mean, I'm not running in the red. I'm not expecting to encounter anything. But now it's become so ingrained in me but that's what I do. And I know that may sound, wow, he must be crazy. It's part of what I do now. It's because of my job. It's because of, if something happens, I feel it's my duty to respond to that threat. If the threat comes through that door right now, I feel it's my duty to respond to that threat, to attack that threat, to stop that threat. So, but what I want you to think about when you go into this business or go to work, or think about this, because the information I'm going to present you here next, it's back to that preparedness, to prepare you for a situation if it happens. I pray that it never happens to any of you. But our society and the way things are, we're out there busy, we're visiting different locations, we're going to shopping malls, we're doing these places. The two events today, one occurred at a software engineering company, and the other one was I think it was a courthouse. So that blind reaction will often make your situation worse. And when we sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight. All of a sudden, somebody comes in through the door and starts shooting. We're going to react one or two ways. We're either going to fight it or we're going to flight, which may be freeze. What I'm trying to get you to do or think about is not freeze, but think. Think on your feet. Only you can make sound decisions that impact your personal safety. Absolutely. Because if you came in going, okay, so if somebody comes through that door, I'm going to go that way. Or if somebody comes in, I'm close enough that maybe I can stop that threat. Now, granted, I don't expect you to think about it, but these are things that kind of casually glance through your mind. Because if you casually glance through it, you're one step ahead of somebody that isn't thinking about that. You're prepared. You're ready to deal with the situation, if by chance. stay in control, and others will follow. If you're thinking about it, you're the only one there, and you're processing this information that's coming at you, you're trying to make a decision, and you act upon that decision, you're way ahead of if you just freeze. We'll talk about these videos here, but as I say, have a plan, like I was just talking about. Have a plan. You come to church on Sundays. What if something happened here? How would we react to it? Now, we want to come in, enjoy the service. We want to listen to what the pastor says. But what would as we sit there, what would I do? How would I respond to this? When we have a plan in place, then we can put it into action. We want to regain control of our situation. It's chaos right now. How can I fix the situation? What if you're right there with the threat? What if the threat's in the other side, or the other building, or in the either in the other building or in the next room? Where do I go? What do I do? Change plans of situation. Be flexible. I've heard the term in the military. We called it semper gumby. Always flexible. So if we're flexible, hey, okay, got this. Well, I was going to do this, but now I'm going to do that. And most of us can think quickly if we're already ready to do it, if we're already prepared. I mean, think about it back to that when I said, what if that when the tornado warning hits? Now the siren's steady. It's here. It's close. What would you do? That's the type of thinking I want to impress upon you. Same thing with the tornado. Instead of the tornado, the gunman. What do I do? So, what would you do an average day at work?
Get on the ground now! Now!
Please don't shoot me!
What would you do? What's our options? So you're already thinking about it. You're already thinking about those things. 3 options I'm going to present to you: the run, hide, fight. I call it a model. But keep in mind, and like it says up there, you're not required to follow these. There is no order here. The action you take will be a decision you will make as the events occur. So if the shooting's in the other building, we're going to do something different. You may choose one and change to another. But be mentally prepared. As we talked about it, they studied this. The reason why we're talking about it, the government has put it out there. Evidence based on a response model, designed to be fluid and dynamic. As I'm saying this stuff, it reminds me of my training, because when we talk about things, we're talking about fluid and dynamic situations. The situation determines which response. The appropriate thinking is imperative. Back to that preparing, thinking. Okay, I'm receiving this information. What am I going to do? And on the bottom, training, the fire drills and lockdown drills, we can prepare ourselves not only to do those things, because that's what most of our kids are being taught, but we can also prepare ourselves. And now the reason why I was here tonight, because we were talking about what to do in our Sunday school. These are things that we can start looking at. First, we're going to talk about run. Have an escape route plan. Back to what I was talking about. We're at work. What if something happens here? Or if I'm at Target or here at church? Have an escape plan. Take only your cell phone. Cell phone's kind of important nowadays. And most of us probably can't live without it. Some of us would like to be able to live without it, me being one of them, but make sure you take your cell phone. Prevent individuals from entering an area where an active shooter is, because if you're headed out to the building and people are still coming in, warn them to get away, get back. Do not attempt to move wounded people. Maybe something really hard to deal with, but that you have to think about your personal safety first and the safety of the people that you're in charge of or that are following you. Call 911 when you're in a safe position. Sometimes we're already running. We're probably thinking about, oh my gosh, I need to dial 911. No. Get to safety. Get to safety first. Again, you may have to bypass injured victims. Stopping to assist may put you at extreme risk. We want to help. Most of us are very kind, caring, helping people. But your life, your lives of the others may be at stake. We have to go past it. Help those that participate in their own survival. If you've got somebody, you're trying to get them out of that building and they're frozen and they're not moving and they are scared out of their minds, you got to let it go. Your safety is imperative. Try your best to get with them, but you have to move on. Again, you're mentally prepared. Now, me standing here in front of you, that's the reason why we're here, because we want to get you mentally prepared about these things. If somebody came in this room right now, would I freeze or would I be able to think and do something? Hopefully this will help you think and want to do something. Again, call 911. Do whatever you need to do to reach safety. But what do we do when we finally reach a safe location? You got to evaluate your status. So those of us who have been in the military, we can start to think about things that we've done. I remember 9-line in the Army, or actually we've used them in the Air Force, but give as much information as you possibly can. This is just a short list. And I'll tell you what, if you can remember one or two things on this, if you encounter something like this, that's very good. Because again, if you're not used to giving this information, but the more information you're able to give to 911, the more information I'm going to be able to get. And as it's coming in, and the police and the fire and everybody's all moving as one, where that person is, who they are, what they look like is very important. What they're wearing. If you can identify the type of weapon, handgun or rifle works just fine. Or if they have any explosives, obviously if you heard any bangs, booms, be prepared to move, get further away. If you move to a location, you may have to move again, but get as far away as you can. Same situation.
You ruined my life! You're gonna pay for it!
Darn it. But see the difference? In the first video you saw, they all stayed in place. And they just got up and ran. You know, if that threat is there and encountering you, what other choice do you have? I mean, but if we're prepared for it, thinking about it, as we talked about, so your coworker, your friend, you know, all of a sudden they're down. You got to keep going. Hiding. The lockdown. I know what teachers. You guys know lockdowns real well, don't you? Because the schools practice lockdown drills quite often. Something happens. If we have a bad guy in the area, we'll call the school. Hey, put the school in lockdown. Shutting the doors, making everything as hard to get into that school as possible. But think about locking down your office. Think about what you would do. And this is probably one of the situations, or if you're in, let's say we were here and we heard gunshots, how could we lock this building down? Or, again, the reason why I'm here, because we were talking about the Sunday school facility in the back, how could we lock that down? If we do lock down, get invisible. You want to make it look like it's unoccupied. That cover versus concealment. Cover is something that'll help stop bullets or explosive bombs, shrapnel. Concealment does exactly that. It just conceals you, like hiding behind a bush. So if you're getting in something, nice solid wood, brick. If you're in a room that's got thin walls, I mean, stucco is there's nothing to stucco in sheetrock. Bullets go right through that. Get low on the ground. Also, you know, back to that noise. Make sure it's hard to think about these things, but if we talk about them, if you remember them. Hey, silence your phones. Talking, no talking. If something's happening in that hallway, you want that bad guy to go past you. And consider an escape strategy. You lock yourself in a room, okay, how can I get out of here? Or can I get out of here? In some cases, in some of the schools here, you lock that door, very difficult to get out. Some of the windows are very hard to break out. So here we have a situation where it's, I don't know if you can see him, but on the photograph to your right, or actually this side. It's been a long day. I'm like, left, right, which way is it? You can see the folks standing there. You can see them. They're gone. Where are they? They're hiding behind your desk. Ironically, a lot of these furniture are particle board wood. It's pressed together wood. It takes, I mean, those of us who have sawed through or tried to break it with hammers and other objects, pretty tough stuff. Pull the chair in, get out of sight, be quiet. Let the danger pass.
You ruined my life, you are gonna pay! Get down now!
I've been shot! Come on. Get down. I'm gonna call 911.
Thinking.
Okay. I'm gonna throw this through the window. Okay, Sarah, we're gonna get out of here.
Anybody heard the term hard targeting? Making yourself a hard target? That's exactly what barricading is. Making yourself stronger, making that door stronger, putting yourself in the safest situation as possible. You also have to consider, too, that the person that's the active shooter is very tunnel vision. So as they're moving forward, there's a very good likelihood that they're not going to take the time to look under the desk. Whereas if I'm methodically searching a room, I'm going to stop and look underneath the desk. Because people hide underneath the desk. Who's going to push the door all the way open? Maybe not. But it's the only, if that's your only option, that's what you got to go for. We're going to talk about barricading. The Virginia Tech incident. Male armed with a .22 and a 9mm pistol enters Norris Hall in Virginia Polytech. He changed the doors behind him. At 0940 hours, students in Norris 205 hear the suspect's gunshots. Students are barricaded and locked in the door, preventing the suspect's entry. The students in Norris 211 lock the door, no barricade. The shooter initially passes the door and then comes back to force its entry. This photo was taken by a student with a cell phone after the students had been notified of the shooting. The shooter was able to enter the room and kill 17, wound 6 more. Difference in barricading. And also, as we're talking about these things, these are incidents we are learning the lessons from. And the reason why we're here tonight talking about that. These tragedies have come to the point where it's sad that I have to stand here and we have to talk about it. Absolutely. I wish I wasn't here. I really do. But the fact that I'm here and the fact that these incidents have occurred have taught us this run, hide, fight model. Things to look out for, things to do better. And heaven forbid they ever happen to us. The Rancho, I had this pronounced correctly, Hama Elementary School. It's November 14, 2007, a man fatally shoots 5 people in a nearby neighborhood. The staff at Rancho Tehama Elementary School, alerted by nearby gunshots, put their school in lockdown. So the police are dealing with the active shooter situation, call the school's locked down. The man rammed the gate of the school with his truck and walked onto the lockdown campus with a rifle and took note of a janitor who was ushering students to safety. The janitor was able to get the students into lockdown classroom. The man began shooting the exterior walls of the classroom, striking one student. The suspect then flees the campus and was fatally engaged by law enforcement. One student was non-fatally shot on campus. Again, back to that, again, walls are thin, but you know, that shooter couldn't get to him and chose to turn around and leave. And that's kind of what we're after. We want them to turn around. We want them to bypass that door. We want to walk past that desk. We want them to move on. The other part of the model is fight. This is sometimes a tough one, but maybe your only option. Maybe your first option. That office scene, which we'll see again, but what are you going to do? Somebody walks in with a gun. What are you going to do? How are we going to handle this? I said it's counter to common societal norms. Most of us aren't fighters. We don't practice to fight. Matter of fact, I got defensive tactics training next week. I practice to fight because people don't always want to cooperate and want to fight. So I have to prepare myself. However, if we're mentally prepared we're thinking about it, what can we do? How can we handle somebody or do something to somebody that's posing a threat, especially with a weapon? But remember to act aggressively as possible. If you're commit to it, if you're going after that person, you want to try to take them down, knock them down, do something, be aggressive. Because the one thing, remember what I told you, if that shooter comes in and they're walking in, they're tunnel visioned. Guarantee they're tunnel vision. They're focused on one thing and one thing only, and they probably don't even see everybody in the room. And the reason I can say this is because I've been under stress situations and we've done under mock scenarios, and I get tunnel vision. So if I get tunnel vision, I train on this stuff, it can happen to me, it's probably happening to them. They're so focused, they're in there. So by acting aggressively, now we're going to interrupt that thought process. I'm not going to go into it, but has anybody heard of the term OODA loop? Called OODA loop. It's actually a Air Force officer came up with it. And what it is the thought process cycle, how we process information. So the bad guy's processing his information. He's coming in to do mass chaos, hurt people, kill people, do all these things. That's what's going on. But all of a sudden, what he's expecting is to meet no resistance. He's expecting no resistance at all. He's expecting the people to freeze, scream, and then they just want to just open up and shoot everybody. Well, if somebody stands up and fights him, and we'll talk about him, but think about the incidents where you've heard of people standing up and taking action. And that's exactly what we're talking about. And again, that may be your first option. It may be as we're thinking, I'm like, that's my only option. Weaponize your environment. If you're comfortable with weapons, if you've got a firearm, you're allowed to be at some place. If you're into concealed carry, most of us will probably walk around concealed carry and never use or pull that weapon out. But again, be ready to practice all those things that come along with that because that carries a high liability, right? Commit to your actions. Like I said, act aggressively and go for it. And that's exactly what happened on January 8th here in Tucson. And as you read it, we all know that Gabrielle Giffords was at the event up north on Oracle Road. But look there. I mean, and this probably takes us back a little bit because we probably remember it, but I mean, Bill Badger, 70 plus years old. Steve Rail, Roger Sulzberger, and Joseph Zamunde tackle him, took him out of commission. And then Patricia comes along and grabs the magazine. Let's stop that threat. Boom. I mean, unfortunately, we lost lives there. I actually participated in Judge Roll's funeral service. So these little things like that obviously hit close to home. Not only is it in our backyard, but look what ordinary people, Saturday morning, they didn't come there to be heroes, but their actions saved a whole bunch of tragedy. More tragedy. So fighting, anything you can think that, again, you're foiling their plan by doing something. They want you to just freeze and not do anything. The shooter's stopping them is the ultimate goal, but delaying them, absolutely. we can delay somebody, if we can slow them down, if we can distract them, gives us, obviously, we're coming. Law enforcement is on their way, lights, sirens. And then we're bringing everything we've got. Matter of fact, I remember the Gabrielle Gifford situation. Oro Valley, Marana, Tucson, Pima County. Matter of fact, anybody that had a uniform on that day was pretty much there at that scene. Thurston High School. And this one actually was a few years old, 10 years old. 15-year-old student was expelled from Thurston School for bringing in a firearm to school. After returning home from the police station, he obtains his father's semi-automatic rifle and kills his parents. Returned to school the following day with 3 firearms and 1,100 rounds of ammunition. Jacob Riker was struck by a bullet from the shooter's rifle and pierced his right lung. The interesting fact of that is actually that bullet that hit his lung actually hit his girlfriend first and then went into Jacob. The suspect placed the rifle to another student attempting to fire, and nothing happened. After the shooter began to reload, Jacob charged the suspect, knocking him on the floor. Jacob struggled with the shooter, who pulled out a 9mm handgun. Jacob grabbed the gun that was pointed towards his face, discharged and struck his knuckle on his left finger. Other students assisted to subdue the shooter. Nobody died that day. Jacob he ended up getting married to his girlfriend, who was shot as well that day. They're both still here. Actually, I went back to read the story because I didn't even know anything about this. But he went on to become a Marine. So obviously getting shot is not going to, he was willing to fight on. Mattoon High School. Students at Mattoon High School produced a firearm during lunch period. Student began shooting inside the cafeteria, hitting another student. 17-year teacher Angela McQueen saw it and lunged towards the firearm. As McQueen and the student struggled over the firearm, the student continued shooting. McQueen was able to keep the firearm pointed at the ceiling. School resource officer was alerted to what happened and was able to assist McQueen in disarming the student and detaining him. One student was non-fatally shot. So here's the teacher jumping in there right away. I mean, it's that survival mindset. Hey, something's happening and I've got to do something to stop it. And again, that may be your first and only option. But otherwise, hopefully everybody else is vacating the area. Shooting starts, how am I going to get out of here? Where am I going to go? What if I can't do anything? I mean, did the teacher have to do that? Maybe, maybe not. Did Jacob have to? He was shot in the lung. He was still able to get it, that adrenaline dump, that go in and take care of it, stop the threat. Action versus reaction. Are shooters prepared for your action? That's what I was talking about. Most cases, they are not prepared for someone to fight them. They didn't come in there looking for a fight. They came in to look and kill and cause mass chaos. Presenting the threat to recruiters requires them to think. All of a sudden, they had this plan, and you put a kink in it. Now you're fighting that person. You're stopping them. You're starting to stop the threat. You're delaying the threat. Hopefully, you're going to be able to stop that threat. Time provides you to take your opportunity to take life-saving action. Exactly what it is. Shit. It could be as simple as that. Knock them down. They're not ready for that. Guarantee it, they're not ready for that. Everyday items can be effective. Anything small can be thrown. Anything heavy will hurt. Anything sharp will stab. Even papers can be a distraction. We talk about objects. Unplug the computer and throw it at them, and we'll show what that does. But if you think about the things we have in our offices, staplers, the letter opener. I mean, we've probably seen movies with letter openers, but anything you can do to arm yourself, and you might be able to think of more than what's on these. Sort of. I'll That, again, that's into a hollow core door.
Those TAFs for me?
Oh, sure,
Well,
I
how
have
about
them
the
right here.
papers?
Here you go.
You're all gonna die!
Again, that's that few seconds save lives. Fire extinguishers. I was looking around, but fire extinguishers. Most businesses, places have them, usually behind glass. It's funny how you think about things. Now we're going to talk about this, and you're going to go out there and walk into a building and go, I know where the fire extinguishers are, and how can I use them? But kind of look at it as a big can of pepper spray. But it can cause burns. The carbon dioxide freezes and blinds. Metal containers make excellent for a club. Once you discharge it, and I think we've seen those in movies. It's a little glamorized. But again, getting it out, even the small ones, discharging. Best. How about
Lock it. It doesn't lock. It doesn't lock. This door doesn't lock.
They're actually running down the hallway. And they discharge the fire. The bad guy, they run into it. They run into a room. They go grab the fire, close the door. They grab the fire extinguisher. He opens the door, and they blast him with the fire extinguisher. And it's one of the bigger ones with the longer hose on it. So again, anything you can do to delay the reactions, that's obviously not going to completely stop the threat, but it'll help you, delay it and maybe get to safety, get others to safety. Talk about the police and when they come. Police are coming, like I told you. We're responding. We've got shots. And sometimes that's all we may do. We got shots fired here. We are going, and we're going. The adrenaline's starting to pump. You're going code 3. You're really amped up because you don't know what you're going to encounter when you get there. We may not even know how many suspects there are. We may not. All we know is shots are fired. So we start walking into a building. If you are coming out, it's hands empty, and then follow the instructions. Want to think about it. If you're running out and police are coming in and going guns pointed at you, that's what we want to see. Boom, right past us, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to keep pressing into the. And especially if we hear, or if you know, it's in the back, it's in building B or building C or in the far office or in the baby section in the Target or something like that. That's where that'll help us. Especially the one thing we look for is what we call, and you may hear this term, stimulus. Stimulus is noise. Stimulus is gunfire. When we hear gunfire, we are going towards the gunfire. Our goal is to stop that threat. Stop it. Again, as I said, point out the suspect if you know where it's at or they're at. You may be possibly handcuffed, depending on the situation. When I look at these situations and the victims that are involved, that's the last thing we want to do is victimize people more because you already may have experienced something extremely traumatic. However, depending on the situation, they tell you to get on the ground or tell you to put your hands behind your back or something like that. Again, this is the mental preparedness. It may happen. It may not, but it may. Advise the police of your injuries. If you're getting told, I'm going to hey, I'm shot, I'm hurt, I may have a broken hand, fracture or something. Again, give the police as much time as possible. And it may take hours or days. We've seen these incidents at schools that hundreds of people involved. It is such an extraordinary, fortunately I've never experienced anything like it. I pray I never do. But it's a huge event. And what little events I look at, there's a lot of things to sort out, and even to get the information that I'm here talking about today. Absolutely, if you're armed, tell the police you're armed. Don't grab the weapon. I think that is normal protocol. If you encounter police at all, I have a weapon. It's located on my right hip. You may have a jacket on. The next instruction will probably be don't grab for it, turn around, place your hands, maybe interlock your fingers, and the officer will probably take it off of
Sheriff's Department, Clifford!
Oh, I got the video.
Get outside! Get outside!
Go!
This is a video of people coming out of the building with their hands up.
Hands up! Turn around!
I know.
Get on your
Maybe,
knees!
yeah, maybe it's that. Need night vision now. I didn't realize that it. But again, like I said, massive response, direct to the threat, looking for that stimulus. Again, the ultimate goal here is to locate and stop the threat, rescue and evacuate, treat and transport. And if anybody, I don't know if I doubt anybody may, well, some of you may have ever heard about the incident command system. That's a multi-agency, multi-governmental classes that are given by FEMA, that how we all are supposed to work together. Sometimes typically it's gotten better over the years, I can tell you that. There'll be a witness in the victim staging area. We're there to try to calm the scene, but it is, the bigger it is, the harder it is to get everything calm. A transition to investigation, and then evidence collection. Emergency care. If by chance you're there, gunshots cause massive bleeding, shock develops within minutes, treat massive bleeding as soon as possible. Being shot does not mean you'll die. And obviously we talked about Jacob at the school. He was shot and didn't die. I did bring my first aid kit, and something to think about if you don't carry a first aid kit with you. You can buy the commercially available ones, but something we don't always think about, and the chance I get to talk to everybody about this, but you don't really need much, and most of this stuff is available. I've got an Israeli bandage, I've got a quick clot, I've got some scissors. Actually, I have a tourniquet if needed. And these you can buy for as cheap as $9. They're not anything. They say that the $30 ones are slightly better. I'm sure they are. They're probably a little bit better quality. But again, I've got a little bit of sanitizer, gloves, some Band-Aids. There is a plastic for an open chest wound, or what they call a sucking chest wound. So if the lungs pierce, you can put that on the chest. These are simple items. You can throw them in a bag, throw them in the back of your car, keep them in your desk at work. I mean, this isn't I'm not going to call this an active shooter bag. It's not. Because when I talk about putting in your car, I have one in my car. I have an extra one in my truck, and I've got one in my other vehicle. And if you're driving down the road and you end up on an accident scene, that's more likely to occur than anything else we deal with. And you're there, you've got a med kit. Hey, do you have bandages? Do you have this? Maybe the injury's severe enough where we can put a tourniquet on. And if you're not familiar with tourniquets, you can put a tourniquet on, tighten it down. There is no time limit on tourniquets anymore. They have progressed to that degree that, and matter of fact, we practice when we do officer down drills. We practice putting it on ourselves and locking it down tight. And you feel it, and it doesn't do any. They found that it doesn't do any major vascular damage. And unfortunately, they've figured this out because of incidents that the military has been involved in. And do not wait for EMS and treatment to begin. Once the threat's over with, and trying to make sure that, again, if you've got something in your desk, you've got something close by, you know where the first aid kit is in your office. If you happen to be out at Target, if there happens to be some type of medical equipment, or ask for it, because there may be an employee that knows where it's at. Hey, does somebody have a medical or a first aid kit? Or I've got something. Or if you're at a shopping mall, plenty of clothes usually, so there's all kinds of stuff you can use for bandages, tourniquets, whatnot. Hand pressure, obviously, direct pressure. Direct pressure wherever the wound is, absolutely try to put something on it, hold it. Again, anything you can do to prolong, slow the bleeding down or stop the bleeding. If you're really lucky, you've got a nurse close by with you. I have to I had an incident where a young lady had driven her car in a canal, and when I got on scene, she was still trapped in the car. We were able to roll the car over with help a couple of guys with some trucks. Both there. One was Air Force, so I was like, "Hurrah, Air Force!" But didn't know that at the time. We get the car over with, we get her out, get the seatbelt out. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get around and get CPR started. This woman is Hispanic, and she is blue as Tom's shirt is. So I'm thinking, oh God. Well, on the other side of the car, I don't remember what his name is. I can see his face still. He goes, "I'm a nurse, and I've got I've got CPR." I'm like, thank God. That is music to my ears. That means I know somebody else knows life-saving other than me. So he got her over there, started chest compressions. Within a few seconds, she started bleeding. Yay! I was like, yes. As a matter of fact, within a week or two, I went over to the house and talked to him. It was awesome. That's the type of life-saving. If you're thinking about things and we come upon these incidents, crashes, we're talking about active shooter, but little things are preparedness. Now we're getting close to the end. Training. Oops. Back. Recognizing the sound of gunshots. Has anybody in here never heard gunshots? Yeah, see, it's heard. What? Reacting quickly. What happens? We hear that gunshot. We hear that stimulus. What are we going to do? What are my options? Evacuating the area, hiding, acting against the shooter, calling 911. Reacting when law enforcement, remember, we're reacting law enforcement, adopting that survival mindset. Again, this is the reason why we're here. We're talking about thinking, run, hide, fight. The incident command system, those are usually for not only law enforcement, medical staff, all governmental law enforcement agencies, but actually school administrators get this type of training so they understand what the law enforcement is going to do and how to start getting things rolling. These two websites here, that ready.gov, I go home and take a look at it. Maybe not tonight, but tomorrow or sometime over the weekend, scroll through it. There is a lot of great information, not only on active shooters, but disaster preparedness, how to prevent fraud, what to do if you're a victim of fraud, things like that are on there. The FEMA, that's a little bit more into the disaster side of things, but that ready.gov, highly recommend. Back to being aware of our surroundings when we walk into things, when we walk into buildings. Again, glance. It's trying to avoid a complacency. Sometimes we get real comfortable. Tucson's a fairly safe place to be. Some of the locations in Tucson are what we consider is fairly safe. But as we know, when we look at the incidents that have occurred, I'm pretty sure that most of the people that were working that day, at school that day, were thinking the same thing. We don't want to sit there and live in fear. That's not what I'm not trying to instill fear. I don't want anybody to go home and go, oh my gosh. No, think of it as disaster preparedness. We're preparing ourselves for a disaster to happen. We're not just preparing ourselves for active shooter. And I even gave you their option about first aid kits. Or even, heaven forbid, a bad storm happens and we've got our neighbors and stuff like that. Our neighbor's house roof got blown off by a microburst. And what can we do to help them? So